YouTube, Tai Chi Twins here. I'm Joshua Rorty.
I'm Jeremy Rorty, and welcome to another edition of Homemade Practice Weapons. In this case, we're going to be talking about the Coiling Dragon Staff, more commonly known today as the 3-section staff. This weapon has deep roots in Chinese history, dates back as old as the martial arts itself. Originally, it was a farming implement used to thresh wheat, which if you're not familiar with it, there's a shaft on the outside of the wheat, and you got to break it apart so you can get the usable part of the wheat. And so this was a tool that was usually a long stick with a short stick attached to the end of it, usually by a rope. Length of the sticks just kind of depended on the farmer that was using them. Now, because most of the metal that these farmers used were reserved for equipment like plows, that's why they like to use these wooden tools. Wood was much more available to them, and then it was just attached by a rope. Every once in a while, these farmers had to defend themselves, and they didn't have money to go buy weapons, so they typically just used the tools that they had available to them. The farmers were so successful in defending themselves with these tools that it became popular as a war weapon called a war flail.
The 3-section version of this war flail became very popular in the Shaolin Temple. They called it the Coiling Dragon Staff, and it became one of the required weapons for Shaolin monks. One monk eventually traveled his way into Okinawa, Japan, where it became very popular there as well, and one of the karate masters shortened up 2 ends and made more of what we would consider the modern nunchaku. Let's show you how we constructed our Coiling Dragon Staff.
We had another hemlock staff that was pretty badly beaten up and splintered, but we figured we could repurpose different sections of it for this project.
Marking measurements is a lot easier if you've got a mechanical pencil. It'll just basically make sure that you're a lot closer to where your measurement's at. What we're measuring is where the holes are going to go in order to thread our paracord to make the 3-section staff. What we did ahead of time is we measured down 1 inch and made a vertical mark, measured out another inch and made a vertical mark. Then we just lined up those 2 vertical marks on the edge of the staff and used that to draw a straight line between the 2. That way we make sure that these 2 holes line up perfectly. If you've identified one that's going to be your central one, you want to make sure that your 2 holes here line up with the 2 holes down here at the opposite end. And you'll notice we did the same thing. We just made the 2 marks. We lined them up, and I marked this line and the bottom line both at the same time. The next challenge is finding the center of the dowel that the thread is going to come out of. Now, you could measure all that. It's really difficult if you're measuring to find the exact center. The solution that we did was took a plain old bottle cap. If you look at all the bottle caps, right here in the middle is a little divot that we just used a corkscrew to puncture right through, and we made a center hole. That central hole is exactly big enough to fit the lead of the pencil through. So all we did is lined this up to be as close to the center as possible, took the pencil, stuffed it in, and then just shifted it around and created our central dot. We're going to do that on all the sides that are going to have string attached to it. Once you've got your holes marked, we're just going to take a little drill bit. You could use a screw, you could use a nail, and we're just going to go right where those holes cross, and we're just going to punch into it a little bit. Even going to get this one that's down here on the very bottom. Once you've got those marked, we're then going to go for a slightly larger drill bit and just open up the hole a little bit. What this is going to do is keep the drill from slipping when we go to make the hole.
Once we finished drilling the holes, we started on the carving. Remember, you want to do all of that before you stabilize and harden the wood. Our primary focus for the central section was to make sure that it could balance on its center groove. Our primary focus for the end sections was to make sure they were evenly weighted. We did finger grooves and cross hatching so you could tell what part of the staff you're on simply by feel. Once we were done with all the carving, we gave them a good sanding before we soaked them in the stabilizing tank. Here's a link to our video on hardening wood weapons if you haven't seen it. This time we continued our experiment by expanding the time of the tank to 5 days. In our previous experiment, we saw an 11% increase after 3 days. This time we saw up to a 27% increase. However, this time we did notice a progressive difference between the 3 sections. Because the pressure is higher at the bottom of the tank, we noticed a 27% increase in the staff on the bottom. We saw a 25% increase in the middle and a 21% increase in the staff on top. What that tells us is that it's a good idea to rotate or even flip your project periodically through the stabilization process. After they dried, we sanded them and coated them in polyurethane before stringing them together. The line we're going to use for this project is 550 paracord. That will get doubled up, which means it should be able to hold 1,100 pounds. That'll be way stronger than what we need. To make it easier to thread, we made a crochet hook out of a paper clip. Start by threading the line through the top hole. Pushing it all the way through will make it easier to hook. Now push the hook through the top hole to snag the line and pull it through. Take the second end of your line and push it all the way through the bottom hole. Then push it into the top hole. Now push the hook through the top hole to snag the line and pull it through. In order to add the end of the staff to the middle section, you'll want one end of your line to be slightly longer than the other. This time start by threading your line through the hole on the end. Now push the hook through the top hole to snag the line and pull it through. Now push the line back through the bottom hole. This end is too short. We're going to thread the other end back through to make it a little longer. Now take the line and thread it through the hole on the end. Push the hook through the top hole to snag the line and pull it through. To make the Coiling Dragon Staff come out to 6 feet, we want the links to be 5 inches apart. It's important to have more line than you need so you can make adjustments. Push your hook through the bottom hole so you can snag the top line and pull it through. Push your hook through the top hole in order to snag the second line. This one is going to be tight to pull through, so you might want a pair of pliers to crimp the hook onto the line. You want the two ends to meet in the middle, so trim one side if it's too long. It could be nice if you have a second right hand. In order to fuse the line to itself, use a lighter to melt the ends. While the end is still hot, use something flat and metal to fuse it together. Now move down to the other end of the middle section to add the next side. Here's the completed Coiling Dragon Staff. Let's take a look at how it compares to a typical 6-foot staff. We came out pretty close. Because we customized this staff ourselves, it came out to be perfectly balanced in the middle. Let's take a look at how it works.
The first thing that I want to point out about the Coiling Dragon Staff, and this is a very dangerous weapon, especially to myself, not necessarily to my opponent. If I don't know how to use this weapon, if I don't commit to my techniques, I'm going to get hit in the head, I'm going to get hit in the shin, I'm going to get hit in the mouth. So it's really important before you attempt these techniques, go back and watch our video on stick and staff, basic movements, because you're going to see that's all this really is. But I have to have my technique well enough that I can commit myself to the movement so I don't injure myself. Clear strike. Actually, figure eights. 5, 6. Try that again.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
Typically, when this weapon was being carried, it'd be folded up like this. Much easier to carry. You're not dragging your weapon around. Now, the thing that I'll point out is that I have the center of the stick. One side's folded in, the other side's folded in. And I can see right here where the end of those weapons are. So when I'm holding it and I go to draw it, all I have to do is grab this end and I'm holding like 2 sticks. Make sure you check out our videos on our fighting sticks. But I can use it making circles, I can use it making figure eights. You'll notice that one of the keys is I'm pulling the weapon to make that center part stable. So it's not flopping around on me while I'm doing my strikes. I pull this in, and now I can do circles, figure eight here. I pull this in, I can do figure eight circles here. Moving on with more basic techniques, there's the 24 count. Again, we have that on one of our videos, so go check it out. This is 24 count with a stick. It works the same. Again, I'm going to use this hand to pull and get tension through the whole weapon while I'm going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. A lot of times it helps while you're swinging this end, you'll see me put it around my back, and that's just securing this end of my hip and giving me more stability throughout my weapon. If I just change one hand to the center, now I have more nunchaka type of technique. There's my circle, my figure eights. Again, I'm holding this end tight to me. I'm keeping this secure so this end's not flopping around. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Another way this weapon can be used is with my basic staff techniques. Now with this 3-section staff, it's not basic technique anymore. You're going to have to be really good at doing your circles and figure eights with a 1-section staff first. So make sure you go back, watch our videos, practice that till you're confident in it, because this is the point where the dragon will bite you. So with the figure eights and the circles, the secret is to have momentum to the ends before you start when you're going from a stagnant position. In this case, I'm doing downward figure eights, so I'm trying to get the sticks to swing behind me to start that motion. So I'll show you how that works. It swings up and then down. And you can see how easily that started my figure eight. Now from my figure eights, I can switch easily to my downward circles. Okay? Again, just make sure you don't get bit by that dragon. 24 count with the staff, a little trickier. I have it swinging ends, but I'm going to swing them independently. For instance, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The other way you can deploy this weapon, again with the way that I have this staff, is I'm grabbing one end right here, while I fling the rest of it out. When I have whipping techniques, that's a very long chain weapon. One of the main advantages to a chain weapon is that it's not stable through the whole weapon. I actually have ways where I can get additional momentum or additional reach or be able to get around an opponent's block. For instance, if I was to sweep over his head and he was going to block my stick, as long as I hit with this part of the stick, you can see how that wraps right around what would have been his block and hits him in the back.
Thanks for watching our video. If you enjoyed it, like it and make sure to share that with a friend. Click the subscribe button and then hit that notification bell so you can catch our next exciting video.